Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kimberland, and I am an educational consultant, an educational advocate, and activist. I am also a transformation coach and a professional frolicker, and this is Minding My Black Ass Business. You might notice that my energy feels a little bit different today. I have been sick all week, so I am recovering from that. And I'm just frankly tired, guys. Um, it is a lot that has been going on, and I just can't wrap my mind around why people think it's okay to mess over our children. So that is kind of taking a toll on me, and it's a lie, it's a heavy burden to bear. So nonetheless, since I am feeling a little bit better, I knew I needed to do another episode. So here I am, ready to do that. And I thank you for being on with me as I stream live here on Patreon. So, so this episode, I am. Back in my educational advocate bag as I am sharing what happened to me while I worked with Chester County Intermediate Unit in Chester County, Pennsylvania, on behalf of the Department of Education in Pennsylvania, from August of 2020 through June of 2021. I was working in school improvement, school climate and culture, and basically came to the understanding that everything about the school improvement system in Pennsylvania is a sham. And they have been squandering millions of dollars, and I'm here to talk about it. So, if you missed the previous episodes, there will be a link to the playlist in the description so you can catch up. Um, in episode 6, the last episode that I aired, we walked through the first part of my 90-day evaluation. That's right, the first part of my 90-day evaluation because we did not finish. So we are picking up today with part 2 of that 90-day evaluation. And really, all I can say is buckle up because this is a lot. And this is when they really started the full court press, and they did not let up. So it is going to be very interesting to see what you all think and what you all feel about what happened because it's really something. So, but nonetheless, I am here and I am ready to talk about what happened. So, again, we're picking up part 7, episode 7, part 2 of my 90-day evaluation. Keep in mind, Chester County Intermediate Unit claims that there was no toxic, traumatizing, or hostile work environment. Everything was absolutely fine, and they're learning. That's what they wanted me to understand, that they are learning. And that's what they want you to understand, that they are learning. So these are just little mistakes that they made along the way, but nothing that raises to the level of a hostile work environment. Interesting. So, before I get started, I have gotten a lot of messages from folks asking me what they can do to support, how they can support, what that looks like and sounds like. So, there are a few ways that you can support. The first thing, you're watching. So that helps because that means that every person who watches is another person that is able to spread the word to someone else about what is going on in the state of Pennsylvania. Also, sharing helps, right? If you share, the more you share, the more that people will hear about what is happening. So I do ask that when I drop the edited videos onto YouTube, if you do share those far and wide, that would really help. Also, if you have not already subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate that. The more subscriptions I have, the more that it is recommended for people to watch. So if you have not already done that, that is also a really easy way to support. So, lastly, remember, I do have a Patreon, and you can subscribe to my Patreon for only $5 a month. And that will support this work that I am doing. The amount of hours that I spend of gathering documentation and putting these episodes together for you, I do that all because I think that our children deserve better. So if you too believe that our children deserve better, I would appreciate your support over on my Patreon. One of the perks of being on Patreon is that you will get the opportunity to join me live when I do these live updates. You'll also get any right now live updates that are happening. That is where I'm going to put all of the documents where you can go back and look at those documents. And you can do what you will with what you find out. So that is another way to be able to support me. All right. So having said that, today we are picking up on February 24th. This is the second part of my 90-day evaluation. So you may or may not have tuned into my update earlier today, but I shared during my update earlier today about Chester County Intermediate Unit and the tactics that they use to try to stop people from exposing the truth of what they are doing. And basically, what they have done is they have filed privacy claims on every single one of my videos. Any video that I mention a name, they have filed a privacy claim on. Keep in mind that all of this is public record, right? You can Google all of these things and come up with it. So I find it very interesting that that is the route that they are choosing. But nonetheless, it's akin to tying something up in court for years, right? They're masters at that type of thing so that they don't have to face accountability. So, they're doing what they do, and they're doing what they did, right? I didn't expect them to do anything differently. This is what they did when I was working with them. So my expectation is that they would do the same thing as I am no longer with them in their attempt to get me to be quiet. What they really wanted me to do was to just stop talking and to go away, right? They wanted me to go away when I was there to get in my place, if you will. Um, and I didn't, right? So then I had to face consequences for that. And that is what is happening now, right? They want me to stop talking and want me to go away so that they can continue on business as usual. They have had many opportunities to do the right thing. Many opportunities to do the right thing, to tap into some form of integrity or some form of humanity, and they have consistently chosen not to. So, because of that, I do feel it is my duty to ensure that I do expose what they are doing because they have squandered millions of dollars that were supposed to go to helping our schools and helping our children. So, yeah. But before I show the video, I forgot, I wanted to give you all a quick overview of the organizational chart. So I created an organizational chart. If you'll keep in mind, they never provided me with an organizational chart. I had continued to ask them about an organizational chart and they didn't have one, right? Which is a sign of an organization. If they cannot provide you with an organizational chart, something is wrong. And I wish I would have known that ahead of time, but I did not. So that's why I'm telling you, if you are not able to place your hands on a clear organizational chart, That means that you can't really understand what the structure is. You don't know who reports to who. You don't know where you go to get support if someone doesn't honor your support. It is a very dangerous practice, and it is something that we had to live with, of not having any type of way to understand how our system really works. So, I have done my best attempt to provide you all with this organizational chart of how things were structured. Okay. So at the very top of the organizational chart is the Secretary of Education. Keep in mind that this happened in 2020, August 2020 through June of 2021. So at the time, the interim Secretary of Education in Pennsylvania was Noe Ortega. Underneath Noe Ortega was his special assistant of education and federally designated schools, and her name is Rosemary. You've heard me mention that several times. So here is where things start getting convoluted, because the way that it was eventually explained to us is that Rosemary was our client. Now, this is not what was told to us at the beginning of our time together, right? But along the way, as I'm constantly seeking understanding and clarification about this system that we work in, it was made very clear to me, one, that this was not an organization, that this was a system. And the other thing that was made very clear to me is that Rosemary was our client. So we were working on her behalf. Okay, cool. So with that understanding, let me explain what is what. So over to the left, you'll see IU3, where it says Allegheny Intermediate Unit. Allegheny Intermediate Unit was responsible for the fiduciary responsibilities. They were the ones who handled the money, the in and out, the whatever that was happening. We really didn't have a lot of interactions with them, but they were involved in this grant. Then, if you go to the far right, you'll see CCIU. And CCIU is Chester County Intermediate Unit, whose executive director is George Fiore. And Chester County Intermediate Unit was responsible for the people. Then in the middle, there's IU 13, which is Lancaster Lebanon IU, and they were responsible for leadership. Okay. So again, I wish y'all could see my mouse, but the way my screen shares is not letting me. So we'll go from the left. So on that third row, IU3, Allegheny IU, is responsible for fiduciary responsibilities. In the middle, IU13, Lancaster Lebanon IU, was responsible for the people who were in leadership. And then to the far right, Chester County Intermediate Unit was responsible for the people. All right. So all the folks that you all have seen up until now, HR Mary, JD Danielle, Jana, they were all employed by Chester County Intermediate Unit, as well as myself and all of the specialists that are there at the bottom. So if you look at that very bottom row, you see the school improvement facilitators, the literacy specialists, the math specialists, the curriculum and instruction specialists, and then the climate and culture specialists. So that is where I was in the mix of things. Now, I don't know if you all can see the separation here, right? So we kind of went down this sidetrack of CCIU and Jana, and then all of the people that work. But there's still this whole section in the middle, right? So in the middle, IU 13, again, was responsible for leadership. So the person in charge there of our project, the statewide project director of the executive director's office, her name was Kristen. And then the school improvement state lead was under Kristen, and her name is Portia. And you all saw Portia in the previous videos, and you'll also hear from her today. And then there were 3 regional leads that were under Portia. So we had Region A, which was Philadelphia. Region B was Middle Pennsylvania, and then Region C was Pittsburgh. And those regional leads are there. So the issue with this organizational chart is, one, if you look at Jana in this organizational chart, she's responsible for all the people, but nobody has jurisdiction over her day to day. Her jurisdiction and her leadership, Noreen, that you all have met, are sitting at CCIU, completely unaffiliated with anything that we are doing from day to day. They have no idea how our system works, and you'll hear a little bit about that today. Nothing. Right. And I shared with you before that Jana also had no idea what we did, because the people that we worked with were the regional leads and Portia. But if you also see, the regional leads and Portia have no direct influence over us, even though we were working with them and for them in this school improvement. So what happened was, if we had an issue, we could go to a regional lead, but that is not going to change anything because Jana is our supervisor. And as you all have found out, Jana was quite problematic and does not know how to be an unbiased supervisor. So we had no recourse of where to go. What I had tried to do was to talk to Kristen and Rosemary, who are at the top of this, right? So Rosemary is our client and Kristen is the project director. However, neither of them have any type of ability to be able to do anything about Jana. So if something happened with us regarding Jana, the only recourse that we had was to be able to go to CCIU, enter HR Mary and JD Danielle. And you all have already seen how they have treated this entire situation. So it put all of us in a situation where we were at Jana's mercy. And we really didn't have anywhere to go, right? So here I come with my audacity to decide to report Jana to HR for Chester County Intermediate Unit. And as you saw in the previous videos, they upheld everything that Jana did and wanted me to understand that Jana has a good heart and she's a good person. And I need to submit myself to further trauma so that she can learn how to be an unbiased supervisor. So I wanted to take this time to explain that to you all because it is not like anything I've ever experienced. And it is probably one of the most dysfunctional type of systems and flows that I have ever seen. It did not work, which is why this whole thing has since fallen apart. Okay, but that is what our chart looked like, and that is how we reported to different people. Okay, so having said that, let us go ahead and get our video ready for today. So again, this is February 24th. This is the second part of my 90-day evaluation. When we left off in the 90-day evaluation, we left off at time management, which I believe was indicator 5 or 6. And that is where we are picking up today. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm ready. And whenever Portia shows up, then.
Okay, great. See. Might as well practice sharing my screen here too. Let me get us set up that way.
Okay. Keep in mind, Noreen is the Director of Innovation and Technology, and she needs to practice how to share her screen. So if that tells you anything about the type of people that they have in place.
Is that working?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. Kimberly, I think you said that you preferred to wait for her until we start, which is,
No, we can go ahead
oh,
and get
okay.
started. Yeah, I
All
don't
right.
want us to not have enough time to get finished.
Okay, great. So I believe that we covered number 5, attitude, the last time that we spoke.
Hmm.
My memory is that time management was the next one, but I wanted to check. I know that the question I wanted to pose to you about time management was, how do you use deadlines to promote progress in your supports to schools?
Hmm.
Is that your memory as well? That's what I
That
want.
feels about accurate. But yeah, I mean, I operate on deadlines every day. So, without a deadline, I think it's hard to get anything done because you can't prioritize.
Agreed. Yes. So, in terms of the time management area, certainly prioritizing tasks effectively and completing assigned tasks in a timely manner and meeting deadlines, came up with meets expectations. Uh, any concerns or questions about that one, or different thoughts?
No,
Okay.
no.
Jonna, any different thoughts on that one?
No, I don't think so. I, agree with Kimberlyn that, the deadlines, the school meetings, the timelines for things are, pretty much in place, and she does a good job of, maintaining all of that. Great.
So I'm stumbling. My only worry is that I can't see the waiting room when I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and see if
Would
she's in the waiting room.
I will be able to see it, Noreen. So I have my thing up. Yeah. So we're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go on to problem solving.
Okay.
For problem solving, I wanted to ask, what types of problems have you encountered and addressed in your work? And how did you resolve those problems?
Well, there are problems every day. There's Portia, I'll let her in. Of course, we're dealing with schools that are in the bottom 5%. So there are problems all around. Hi, Portia. Specific examples could be a school having a negative. I encounter this almost every time with every school, that they've had a negative experience with the CSI process, and they aren't sure of what that support will look like, because in the past it hasn't met their needs. So what I focus on is relationship building, as well as making myself useful and valuable, if you will. So I actually just left the new academy just a moment ago, and we were talking about the work that we've done and how the relationship that we have built allows them to be able to take risks and really be able to capitalize on the learning and accept feedback. Sometimes that feedback is uncomfortable. So for instance, I had to talk to one of the administrators today about second guessing herself and using "I don't know" as a way to opt out. And I was like, we're not going to do this, because you do know. I know that you know, and you know that you know. And we've had this conversation. So nope, we're not doing that. Let's go ahead and center in on what you do know. And she was able to receive that from a place of support, and knowing that it comes from a place of wanting her to be her best, and not from a negative place or anything like that. And at the end of the process, she was just like, I just always thank you for holding me accountable, and, calling things out when you see it. That's the only way that I'm going to be able to grow. So those types of problems, I think, are what I expect and anticipate. Is not something that's new to me. So because I build relationships very quickly, even in a virtual space, that's something I can rely on. So yeah, that's just one example.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think really common with statewide work, and particularly school improvement. It's never been easy, regardless of whether it's CSI or NCLB or whatever the name or timetable has been for those types of supports. So yeah, I totally agree. Relationship building is a great tool to use in terms of problem solving.
And Kimberly, you bring up a good point too about the perception shifting of the CSI model, and the way in which it's supportive in an ownership type way. I think that's a great point. And that is
Yeah.
that is a a continued work forging ahead.
Mhm.
Any thoughts regarding this meets expectations?
So before we jump into that, I do want to say I noticed that my energy is really different as I am watching myself in this. This was February 24th. So by this time, I had gotten to a doctor. I had been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and I had started medication. So I could tell that I was typing, and my speech is very different. I could tell that that was happening. So wanted to kind of point that out because these are the things that we have to pay attention to as this is happening.
Rating.
I mean, I know that this is something that I do extremely well. I don't know what that looks like in order to put this on a continuum. I was under the impression it was kind of meets expectations or don't, because there are several other areas that I know that I am beyond meets expectations. So I don't. So let me rewind just a tad because what just happened is we had gone through this indicator and Noreen all of a sudden says, well, what do you think about meets expectation? Now, if you saw the previous episode, episode 6, I asked her during that episode, is this pass fail? Because I was under the impression that a 90-day evaluation is pass fail. You're meeting expectation or you're not meeting expectation. She really didn't give me a clear answer at that time, but we just went through in the first in the first meeting, we went through the indicators without her stopping to ask me anything about the ratings. And if you'll remember, I even ended the episode saying she didn't change not one rating, right? So she had me give all of that evidence and never offered the opportunity for a rating to change. So this is the first time that she's saying something. Well, what do you think about this meets expectations? So let me back it up just a bit so you can hear her ask that.
Rating.
And that is that is a continued work forging ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts regarding this meets expectations? Rating.
I mean, I know that this is something that I do extremely well. I don't know what that looks like in order to put this on a continuum. I was under the impression it was kind of meets expectations or don't, because there are several other areas that I know that I am beyond meets expectations. So I don't know really how to respond to that.
Well, the way that the rubric's set up, and I remember you asked last time, is it pass fail? And it's not pass fail. This exceeds expectations takes a proactive approach to problem solving and implements solutions as appropriate. So when I read the difference between meets and exceeds, first of all, meets is fine. It's good. It's solid. It's nothing wrong with meets expectations. Exceeds would be addressing those problems almost before they happen, right? Like anticipating that that's going to happen and then providing a solution to it. So, is there an example of a time where you have proactively addressed a problem? So maybe not waiting for that person to say, I don't know, but addressing an issue before it gets to that point?
Yeah, I do that in all my work. So I'm consistently proactively planning. Planning is something that I live by. So, we had that conversation about Charlotte Danielson's framework and how that is the cornerstone for all of the work that I do. So whenever I'm going into any situation, I'm always anticipating any barriers that might come up, any obstacles, what I need to do 4 steps ahead so that I know what I'm going to do in in that particular space to get us to where we're going. So again, because this is fresh in my brain with this new academy example, the entry points to start this work with them came from PLCs, and they wanted some support with PLCs. Well, through that support, we were able to support them in structuring a PLC while having them experience what a functional PLC looks like. So we have taken them through unpacking domain one. We've taken them through a process of applying each of those components to case study teachers. So I adapted a tool called Analysis of Teachers tool, where it really talks about setting expectations, sorting teachers into categories so that they're able to focus on the case study teacher to create differentiated support. Through that support, we then launched into this process of them saying that it was their idea, but somewhere where we already wanted to go, for instance, of unpacking questioning and discussion. How do you ask the questions that are going to facilitate the moves that you need to happen? So that's what today's session was about. So I am always proactive. I can't say that there's a space that I've entered into where I'm not anticipating that something might go right or left. And there is a plan in the planning for if things go a different way. What happens if they get it quickly? What happens if they struggle with the learning? What happens if there's a complete barrier? So that's the place I move fluidly through.
Great. Jonna, any examples that you can cite that would fall more into this exceeds expectations realm rather than the meets for this one?
I do know that Kimberlyn, along in tandem with the statewide team supporting the school role.
So I'm going to stop right there for a second because Jonna is making an attempt to minimize my work. So I know Kimberlyn in tandem with the statewide team. No, what I want y'all to understand is that everything that came from we should probably do this in order to be more efficient came from me. So if my team was doing something, it was because I was like, y'all, we probably need to make sure that we have a standard time that we meet. Y'all, it's crazy for us to be jumping from meeting to meeting. We need to make sure that we have processing time to do that. I am going to make sure that I put time on my calendar to plan for the meetings that I have, because this system does not support planning. The system rewarded going to all of these meetings, quantity over quality. That's what the system supported. But I do not do that type of work. I work in quality. So I made sure that I carved out time for me to be able to give my schools the best of me. So as she tried to be like, oh, you in tandem with the statewide team. No, it was me. Like I said, it was me. I was the one who decided to do all of these things. Okay. So let's continue on of hearing of whether I am meets expectation or not.
And specialist support has really taken an active role in finding a process or developing a process for that communication pipeline within the team, so that referrals into the school work were more structured, more intentional. So I can absolutely see that was part of although it was and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kimberlyn, reactive to the need, there were also some things that you anticipated proactively in developing that plan with your colleagues.
Yeah, and we had conversations about that of systems, right? So, and I consistently talk about coming from Florida and having a very systematized approach, that's something I'm always looking for. So I can remember having conversations with Jonna as early as the second week. And I'm like, so I recognize that these are some gaps that we have: facilitation, or knowing how to navigate through an entry point, or, looking at things through an equity lens. Like these are things that I'm always aware of and have been very vocal about since the beginning. So, I do what I can where I can to make the impact and influence on system wide, on my state team, and then for my work that I do.
So it sounds like we have agreement here for problem solving to move that one up to an exceeds expectations. There's been examples given. So if that's all right, I'm fine with that. We would move this to exceeds. There we go. All right. Okay, to move on to teamwork and collaboration.
Sure.
Can you tell us how you've contributed to teamwork to support schools and what that has looked like?
So one of the things that immediately comes to my mind is the establishment of a PLC with our statewide team. That wasn't something that was already established. So what I noticed is that we were entering spaces without being on the same page. We didn't really know each other and didn't have a working knowledge of each other's way of work. So in the past, in my past experience, I know it was very beneficial to have that space to really be able to talk through those things, team build, to strategically plan, have working space to be able to create some of these things that will help our system to be even better. So again, I'm always thinking about what I can do, how I can impact other people in that work. I'm all about exponential impact in any space that I enter. So again, this is, something that I do all the time. There is the schools that I'm working in, I don't have any poor relationships with any of those schools. Like those, they allow me to have courageous conversations about race and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we're holding each other accountable. And the trust level that has been built, I think, just speaks to that collegial nature. And my team members have said to me often that they appreciate sharing space with me. They appreciate the fact that I extend grace and space to people that are in the room while including them in the process. Something else that I've also done is made sure that there is scheduled time for pre-planning, because I saw that that was a gap. So whenever I'm working on a project or in a school, there needs to be time to actually pre-plan before going in to make sure we're on the same page. Then there needs to be actual structured time to debrief, to talk about what worked well, what didn't work well, what are our next steps. Regarding our long plan, that we have. So I don't really know how to operate outside of being collaborative and collegial on a team. So again, keep in mind that all of that stuff that I just mentioned is stuff that was not in place. There was nothing in place to make sure that we planned, that we had time to plan, anything about a plan. There was nothing in place to make sure that we were, like I mentioned in there, showing up on the same page. We would show up to meetings and have no idea what the point of the meeting was, what the objective of the meeting was. Can you imagine how chaotic that is, to show up to a meeting and you have no idea of the objective? So people are just doing their own thing that's not aligned with something else. Like, who's in charge? What is happening here? So I started being like, we need to meet before this meeting, because we need to know that we're walking in here on the same page. Like, we were supposed to be, we were the representatives of the Department of Education for school improvement. We are going into schools telling them what they're doing wrong, which is the stance that they would take, that the schools are doing things wrong. That's why they're failing. As opposed to this system that's supposed to be supporting the schools is so dysfunctional that we don't even have systems in place for how to govern ourselves. So how are we going to go and help schools that don't have systems in place? It makes zero sense. How am I going to tell you how to do something that I'm not even doing? And I would say to them all the time, if we're supposed to be the ones that are the specialists, we got a lot of work to do, because we are dysfunctional as hell. So I am the one saying all of this. I'm the one bringing up all of this. Keep in mind that most of the people that were in our system, they're from Pennsylvania. So they're used to this ass backward ass way of just showing up and winging it. I'm not used to that. And I'm not going to adopt this dysfunctionality to fit in with your dysfunctional system. So every time something would come up, I'm constantly making suggestions, constantly trying to put things into place in order to be efficient and effective. So we're able to help these schools who are responsible for these children. None of that was in place. Jana, our supervisor, had nothing to help to improve. Nothing. And again, she had no idea what we did from day to day. So why are you even here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very helpful. And I think something that actually it's really right in line with the work that our consultants do as part of the IU with other areas. You know, in our division, we have a multitude of consultants that serve Chester County, and very familiar with that process of needing to prepare, deliver, reflect. And of course, there's always this concern about, well, how much time is needed for these things, and how do we ensure delivery to students and staff or whoever the customer is in a particular situation. So a lot of your example rang true with me from the type of work that we do. Donna, any further items here for teamwork and collaboration?
Oh, sorry about that. Kimberly, I'm just curious if you would elaborate on like challenges that you encounter in that realm.
In teamwork and collaboration. Challenges might look like territorial nature of work, unwillingness to share, for others to share the work that they're doing with the team. Challenges might look like the micromanaging spirit of holding close, this is my role, so this is what I'm going to do, stay out of my lane type of thing. I don't really engage in those types of battles. I do my best to stay out of that because that's not beneficial to the work that needs to be done at the school. So I'm always looking at what is going to be best for schools. I've worked with people who are not collegial in the past. I am. So the invitation is there, and you can participate or not. And, we're going to do what's in the best interest of the school and the children that are sitting in the seats of these schools that deserve the best education possible. So
what about within the schools, Kimberly?
So she's pushing for something in particular. But before she does that, I want to take us back over to this organizational chart. And I just remembered that I left off a group of people. There were also data specialists that were there. So down at the bottom where you see school improvement facilitator, literacy specialist, math specialist, curriculum instruction specialist, common and culture specialist, there were also data specialists. So there were about 35 to 40 people maybe that were being managed by Jana. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is when I was talking about people not wanting to share what they were doing, or people being territorial, or people micromanaging. So in the last episode, I shared about how my presence in certain schools would allow the opportunity for other specialists to be able to come into the school, because my goal is to help the school. So if I see that there is some type of literacy concern, then I'm going to loop in a literacy specialist to help this school, right? Regardless of whether I was the one who started the work with the school or whatever, it doesn't matter. Our objective here is supposed to be to help schools. However, what would happen is people would hoard the work. So they would know that, for instance, I was a DEI specialist. Every last one of these schools had some type of climate and culture issue related to some type of bias that was happening. Yet, Some of the specialists or school improvement facilitators did not want me to come to their schools because they were being territorial. So they denied the school the opportunity to work on the root cause of their problem because of their ego. Now, you tell me if that is how that's supposed to work. Because where I come from, children come first, period. So even if I don't like you as a person, if you have a skill set that is necessary to help these kids achieve, I need you to get over here and do what you're supposed to do. But they wouldn't. They wouldn't allow, or they wouldn't even let it be known that there was something happening in the school that they needed support with, because they were so busy trying to hold on to be the one who was doing the work at the school instead of making sure that the school had the support that they needed. And that's important to understand, because that was the climate of this system that we worked in. It was not collegial. It was not collaborative. They really thrived off of keeping us separate and thrived off of making sure that we were working in silos.
Even within the school teams as well.
So some of the challenges I have encountered in working with the school teams, one in particular I can think about was encountering explicit bias and racism and problematic statements that were launched at myself. In that situation, I can say I was very disappointed that my team members didn't say anything in that situation. And I had to have several meetings with you, with Portia, with Liz, with different people about it, and ultimately chose that I was not going to further interact with the school because the behaviors didn't change. So in that type of situation, I empowered Carrie, who has the same skill set that I do, gave her all of the information, let her know the situation, and she was more than willing to pick up on that school so that I didn't have to encounter trauma at the hands of a school.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's of concern to me to hear that. I'm sorry that happened. Since John and I were co-supervising at this point, if you encounter a situation like that, again, I definitely would want to work with you and Jonna to address that situation. Yeah. So I'm glad that came up. Jonna, thanks for asking the question. I didn't think to go there.
And for clarity, Kimberlyn, too, while we're on that, not that I want to spend a lot of time on that particular area or issue, but for clarity, that was not on in a conversation that you and I had. Unfortunately, I know I had left at the beginning of a meeting where I think it may have come up, and I missed that meeting. And then
you're right.
So I think, that there was probably some sort of timing and communication gap within that process.
So Jonna's trying to cover her ass and let it be known that this blatant situation was not on her watch. However, Jonna is my supervisor. So we come back to the chart, right? It is your responsibility, supervisor, to make sure that I am able to report these things to you. One, but keep in mind, when I previously reported things that were happening, Jonna told me that it happened because the people were just from the South. And that's why it was okay that they were treating me so poorly, because they were from the South. So why would I then come to you to now report what is happening at this school? The other thing that happens is, again, if you look at the organizational chart, the regional leads were the ones who were in charge of schools, then Portia. So I'm supposed to go to them because they are the ones who are in charge of the schools. Again, Jonna's over there on the side. She has zero interactions with the day-to-day work that we were doing. So for her and Noreen to sit here, oh, I'm so sorry, and if we would have known and all of that, if you would have known what? There was nothing that you, one, could have done because how convoluted this system is, and two, would have done because you've already shown me that you dismiss the things that I say. So This is a performative act. Let's just say that. This is performative.
Yeah, I remember now, you were involved in the conversation about Stilton, of how to navigate around a sticky situation there, which with that school, I'm glad to say that we have furthered that work. And that was some administration versus LEA type of conflict that I wound up in the middle of at the very beginning of my work, and just did not feel that that was my place to address those issues. But after having a conversation with Jana as well as Liz, re-entered the school space, and we have been able to, we started out with them on social emotional learning. We went through, again, the analysis of teachers process to help them to build their culture team. And we have now extended that work into doing DEI work with their school district. So with the superintendent, assistant superintendent, as well as the elementary staff. So, that is something, again, like I don't usually have these types of issues. So it's something that, I'm very able to navigate, but I do have a hard line with being disrespected and with encountering any type of trauma. I do not feel that any of us should have to deal with that in any type of work environment. So that is a very hard line for me. But other than that, I just build the relationship. Like, that's how you work to keep things collegial.
Yeah, please let Jana or I know, we can connect with each other if you run into a similar situation like that.
Okay.
I want to make sure that it's being addressed appropriately, not only, of course, for your benefit, the school's benefit, students.
So I also want to remind y'all, I had this conversation with not Noreen, what's that lady name? Danielle and HR Mary. And they told me they couldn't do nothing. They told me they could. Matter of fact, when I pull this live, I'm going to go back and I'm going to pull that clip when Danielle started out with their findings. And she was like, yeah, so we're going to have a meeting, and, but there's not really anything we can do because.
Okay, guys, I want to jump in here right quick to bring you back to that flashback. Again, this footage is from episode 3, where Danielle was sharing their findings that she and HR Mary had found from the investigation. And she was sharing with me how she was going to address the concerns that you just heard me bring up in the video to Noreen, that Jana pushed for me to have to say. This is where Danielle told me what their findings were and how they were going to deal with what they found. Okay, so we are going to watch that video now.
And if it's okay with you, I'd like to address the statewide team ones first, just because I feel like it's to be frank, it's easier.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So as we understand, sometimes SIFs and regional leads pop into meetings after they've already started. And sometimes they text during the meetings. And I understand that you were told that, even what they were texting about for one meeting. I understand also that you offered to provide notes to one of the SIFs as opposed to having him enter the meeting an hour late. And but nonetheless, he entered the meeting an hour late. Is that correct?
No, not that particular meeting. He did not
that
enter
one.
late, but
another meeting.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that also that they're invited to the meetings, but they didn't accept. They don't accept. They just
Right.
Correct.
So you don't know if they're coming or not coming.
that is correct.
Mind you, I've already clarified all of this with Mary, so why am I having to re-clarify? Because I've already clarified this on video, right? Because Mary asked me that same question. So we've already had this conversation, but go off, Danielle, go off.
Right. And then the other big area that we heard was about a hostile work environment in a particular school.
That's
correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. And I know that you reached out to Portia and I believe Liz about that. Yes. So I don't know the status of the communication about that. And so we, that I can't tell you what the result is because I don't know the status about that.
Understood.
But what we need to do, because the statewide team consists of people from the CCIU and from IU 13 and 14 and 3 and lots of different people.
So remember when I was telling y'all all the different IUs that are involved in this system, right? So she just named them off, which again, Rosemary had told me, why don't they just put you with another IU? Because there are so many that are there. So then y'all just named off all of those IUs.
We need to, Dr. O'Neill and I, do you know who Dr. O'Neill is? Dr. Noreen
do not.
O'Neill? Okay, she's in charge of the grant project for CCIU, and she is Dr. Weller's supervisor.
Okay.
You all will
Dr.
meet her
O'Neill
as
and
well.
I plan to have a meeting with all the IU partners. I believe it's going to be scheduled in the very, very near future to discuss our findings, to discuss, not necessarily to call you out and say this is what Kimberlyn shared with us, but to say that we've learned that these things are going on statewide and in the meetings, and we'd like to come up with a plan to collaboratively work together to either collect more data to find out more information, and then whether we need to collect more data or not, we need to come up with a plan of action to support training and set expectations for professionalism and teamwork. So that's as far as we can go with that part of it right now, because we don't have direct control over it.
I understand, and none of those concerns will be surprises to any of the parties that are involved. They have been communicated many times, so
Okay.
I understand.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so I am going to pause there. And in a moment, we're going to go back over to episode 7, where I was sharing with you all how, in hindsight, watching Jonna and Noreen express all this concern about what they would have, should have, could have done if they were aware of this hostile school environment that I was having to that I was being forced to be involved with, further underscores why what they are saying right now is complete lip service. Because Danielle had just shared how convoluted the system was and how CCIU does not have full control over anything that happens in a school site. So let's go back over to episode 7, and I'm going to show you that organizational chart just to further underscore what I am talking about here. That organizational chart, CCIU, Chester County Intermediate Unit, has nothing to do with the day-to-day work that is happening in the schools. The regional leads are responsible for that. So all of this is empty that they're saying to me. All of this, there is nothing that they can even do because of the way that the system is set up. This is purely performative. This is purely lip service. And HR has already told me that they can't do anything because that didn't happen at CCIU. Okay. So I want to just keep this framing, because they really trying to act like they're doing something for this camera, and that is not the case.
That attend that school, I believe that it's far reaching. So yeah, thank you. Are we okay with teamwork and collaboration then?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay. 2 more. Communication. In this case, effectively using different modes of communication: professional, respectful tone, thoughtful, and empathetic. This is a statewide project. There's always communication challenges. What have been some of the top challenges, and how have you addressed them?
The top challenges, I think many of them got resolved with the communication practices document that was created, but some of those challenges looked like being statewide and being responsible for so many more schools not having a school name on the subject line, not having an agenda, not having a Zoom link. So having to spend copious amounts of time to figure out where this email goes with this.
So I want to pause there for a second because I need y'all to understand how dysfunctional this system was. I want y'all to understand that we had 95 schools in this system, and we would get emails that would be like, state meeting tomorrow, or an email would be like, follow up. To what? And to whom? Like, we would get calendar invites with no Zoom link. So now I'm supposed to go search through 17 emails to try to figure out where the freaking Zoom link is. Like, it was so dysfunctional, y'all. And the amount of time that we would have to spend on simple things like, who is this school improvement facilitator? What school do they manage? What day, what time, to try to figure out what is this email even in regards to? Y'all, we were working on behalf of the Department of Education for school improvement, and we didn't even have protocols for how to make sure an email was clear, how to make sure that everything was included on a calendar invite. This should not be the case at this level of execution. Should not. But it was the norm. So I, again, was like, can we get some protocols? Can we get some standardization for what this is supposed to look like? Secondly, this idea of communication challenges is something that they use with BIPOC people to make us the problem. So if you go back and watch the videos with JD Danielle, she uses communication challenges a lot when she talks about how Jana launched microaggressions and how she handled and dismissed my claims and minimized my concerns. She wrapped it up into this communication challenges. So this was a narrative that they were also trying to create about me, that I had communication challenges. Again, I was the issue. And you'll see a little more of that in just a sec.
Action item belongs to, or what have you. Those types of things, I'm grateful to say have a resolve for the most part. Otherwise, I think that there is still language that is consistent with not being aware of bias. And I think that is going to be a consistent problem until it begins to be explicitly addressed. And gratefully, you know, this is an area, again, I don't know where this goes on the in the 10 places, but that I have been very I was the one who launched the equity work, the equity task force that is being done based on my experience. So for instance, the experience I just shared with the school, experience with coworkers, experience with leadership, just experiences overall, and recognizing that that is a growth place for everyone. So I continue to hear in spaces just language that is evident of the fact that there's some work to be done there. In that, I point things out when it is appropriate to point those things out. Some of the things are not things for me to point out, but I point things out when they're appropriate to be pointed out. But as far as me having issue with communication with anyone, I don't. You know, it just, I feel like it's just kind of the way that we operate. Unfortunately, there are unwritten rules in every organization, and some of ours are rooted in some practices and biases that are just very evident.
So I clearly was with it that day because I'm like, let me tell you something. I was like, I'm about to name all of this today. And I was being kind because I was like, some of our this, some of our that. All of the this and all of the that was rooted in bias. All of it. And all of it wasn't biased about race either. It was gender bias that was happening. It was socioeconomic status bias that was happening. It was age bias that was happening. It was ability bias. It was so much bias floating around this system every single day without fail. Something would happen that would highlight some type of bias every day.
Well, I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit more about that. And can you give me some specific examples of that language of bias that you're referring to?
It could sound like something like jokes, you know, so a joke might sound like, you know, oh, well, you know, as soon as I wake up in the morning, you know I'm going to mess something up. So I just go ahead and apologize when a male is in the presence of women, right? Which gives the indication that that's some type of home situation that's happening, but it's being applied to the females that are in the space. To me, that's not appropriate. Or it could sound like, let's say a school saying something to the effect of, you know, this is the best that we're going to do with our kids. So, you know, this is the best. We're doing what we can with what we got, right? And then the lack of saying something from our team, which I find it happens more often than not, is the lack of directly addressing those types of statements. As a Black woman, and usually the only Black woman who is in many of these spaces, I shouldn't always be the one who has to stand up and say something about problematic language. So sometimes I choose to, and sometimes I don't. It really depends on the situation, but I do take note because it is evident. So, I would almost say it's more the lack of saying than it is the actual saying of things, which can be just as bad.
Yeah. So thank you. That's helpful. So the example of that first example. So when you were saying, I just can't do anything right, I'm going to apologize up front. The example that you were giving was that a male was saying that coming into a meeting of women, like basically my wife's a nag and now I'm transferring that onto the women in this room. That's
Correct.
Bias. Absolutely.
Correct. And it's a misogynistic statement, and it's something that happens often. But again, when one is unaware of their implicit bias, they bring themselves into the space. So that's just one example.
Yeah. And certainly having low expectations for students, whether because of disability, color, where they live. Absolutely. That is something that we certainly have encountered in our work here at Chester County IU. And I've certainly addressed it and supported staff members who have addressed situations like that. Thank you for saying something. It's necessary. We're talking about the lives of children. And I think sometimes it's uncomfortable to kind of call out those statements when they're made. And yet it can often have a very long lasting impact, I can say, from having those experiences myself as a supervisor.
So it's interesting. I'm going to clip what Noreen just said because there was an incident that occurred where Noreen was present, where someone used a racial slur and she did nothing. She did nothing. Jonna did nothing. HR Mary did nothing. JD Danielle did nothing. The other director of HR, Maureen, did nothing. They did nothing in the face of blatant racism and macroaggressions. But go off, Noreen, about how you support. Go ahead.
I agree.
So great examples. Anything, Jonna, to add, or anything you wanted to ask about with communication?
No, I think that was a very thorough conversation. Thank you, Kimberlyn, for sharing those examples.
Are we okay with the communication rating then, in terms of?
Sure.
Final one on this page. Professional development. So in this case, I know that you've participated in a good deal of professional development as part of the program. What's your greatest opportunity for professional growth for this year? Where would you like to grow, and where do you think that would be most beneficial to those that you serve?
I think the greatest growth point for me is in building capacity of those who are around me and share spaces with me. I want to, sorry, Alexa tries to keep me on schedule with the things I have to do. I want to be able to share the wealth of knowledge in an impactful way. So personally, that looks like figuring out how to enhance what we already have in place to be able to benefit more schools. So it is a pain point for me that, for instance, I'll just use DEI work, for example, that is just me, right? So Carmen does a lot of culture responsive teaching in regards to math, but when we're talking about DEI work as a whole, it's just me. And I'm only one person, and I'm only in about 15 schools, but those 15 schools, I'm there weekly for an hour and a half to 2 hours, right? So this is intensive work. So I'm constantly trying to figure out how to bring other people along with me in this work so that they too can be in spaces and fighting against systemic racism and inequities as well. And that is a very in-depth process and a very lofty goal. But I think it's one that's so necessary, because when I'm looking at the children who are sitting in these seats, many of these children are children of color. Many of these children come from low socioeconomic status. Many of these children have disabilities, and they are just consistently underperforming. And I think that as a team, we have to be more intentional about addressing that. And Jonna, this is a conversation we had in our original goal setting meeting. Is I was talking about this equity lens and how I would like to be able to give my glasses to others so that they're able to see what I see. I landed on a really powerful analogy the other day when I was trying to explain to a school what this looks like, of having a social emotional lens, having a trauma informed lens, having a lens of restorative practices, having a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, having a lens of justice. Like all of that is like when you go to the eye doctor and they ask you lens 1 or 2, right? And then they pick the one, then they put the next one on, 1 or 2, then they pick it, next one, 1 or 2. They're not things that are to be done in isolation. They're things that are to be done in parallel so that we have on the best set of glasses possible. And I know that I enter spaces in that way, and I want to be able to continue to be more effective in that. But I think that I would be kidding myself if I didn't recognize that that's not the common way that everyone looks at everything. So I'm always trying to figure out how to help those around me be just as aware and have on the correct pair of glasses to be able to look through those lenses so that we can be active disruptors of the things that are holding the students back and holding the schools back.
So your area or opportunity for professional growth, if I'm hearing you right, is how to better help others see things through that lens that they might not be seeing on their own.
Yeah, how to be able to affect a system in order for that to happen, right? So that means that, of course, I have to be more effective in my communication, or I have to know how to navigate the system or what have you, but how to be able to create that system wide so that every school has the opportunity to do that, because that impact is not being felt in 95 schools, and 95 schools deserve and need to have that in their schools. But if we aren't all doing that, then 15, because I just so happen to be linked to those schools, get that. That's an inequity in itself. So that's my thing. How do I eradicate inequities, not just in the spaces that I'm in, but in the spaces where everybody is in? But since it's one me, that means that we have to build capacity or bring people along for the ride.
Yeah.
Noreen didn't like that answer. So she wanted me to say something like, oh, I need to work on time management and I need to work on using a calendar and like some kind of basic type of something. And I'm out here like, I need to learn how to affect systems, because what y'all are doing is not working. It is not okay. She didn't like that response. She wanted me to give something that really had to do with some type of skill set. But keep in mind, the skill set that I needed was the skill set to figure out how to affect these systems. How can I be more effective so that we can create the type of change that needs to happen? Because there are inequities everywhere. How can I impact that? While she wanted me to be thinking of something on a micro level, I need to learn how to share my screen. And it was so much bigger than that for me.
I think one thing that I'd love to get your thoughts on that is, my experience is that can look different from change within the system versus being a change agent outside the system.
Mm-hmm.
And in the position that you're in, you've got a foot in both worlds, right? There's opportunities to do that from within the system, as well as being perceived as an outsider from some of the schools that are receiving that support. So it's not necessarily a question for today. I'm just wondering if in terms of professional development, strategizing about the difference in position in that way, and then how communication is most effective in each setup.
And navigating this system that I didn't grow up in, that is still very foreign to me, even though I'm immersed in it now. But many days I wonder about the system. So yeah.
So it is challenging to grow in knowledge of the system as well as how to make change in the system at the same time.
Yep.
And knowing that the sustainability of the system is lingering into the schools, but not intentionally to stay, so that the capacity building is happening, but that, it's not about bringing that in because you can't obviously live in 95 schools, and nor should any one person.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
And just let me say for the record, good leaders build capacity. Okay. Good leaders build capacity. Good leaders build other leaders. None of that was happening here. Okay. So this is stuff that I already know. This is stuff that I already do. I am out here thinking about how I can impact this whole entire system so that our schools can get what they need. They are thinking on a micro level, and I just wasn't there with them.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, but I'm keeping an eye on time. All right, we could talk about that. I could ask you questions about that for a half hour, and I will not.
For sure.
Not today. Under job skills, well, first of all, let me go back. Any other questions related to professional development or any of these areas that we just went through?
I don't have any questions per se. I just wonder about, I didn't realize in the beginning that things were on a continuum. So, that was my pass fail question. So I don't feel that, problem solving is the only area that I'm above meets expectation. So I don't know what that looks like, if that's something y'all go back and talk about or what have you. But yeah.
What other areas would you like to talk through?
Now, again, keep in mind, she is doing this on the fly. The entire first video of this, which was episode 6, which was an hour long time that we were together, she never talked about changing any of the ratings. As a matter of fact, I pointed it out the entire time. So now that we're in the second half of this, she throws in this curveball for indicator 7, but I didn't get those opportunities for the other indicators. Now we got to go back and re-talk all the stuff that we already talked about in the first hour meeting of this 90-day evaluation that is already over a month overdue. But I want y'all to know that Chester County, let me single me out so y'all could. Chester County Intermediate Unit's stance is that I was not treated any differently than anybody else. Everybody else had to go through this exact same process, okay? That is their stance. The public record will determine if that was a lie.
We would have to go back through them all. Initiative and responsibility, or, customer surveys are two that stand out for me. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so if we go to initiative, the difference between meets expectations and exceeds, according to the rubric, is, I'm going to kind of read them, just talk out loud. Mm-hmm. Demonstrates adaptivity, flexibility, initiative within the context of the job description, and is capable of working independently without supervision. Exceeds is contributes ideas for meeting additional demands of the program, resulting in significant contributions to the advancement of the department, and demonstrates exceptional initiative as a proactive and independent worker. So, Kimberlyn, what are your thoughts? I'm posing it to you because I know that John has already gone through this and given her rating as meets, but obviously.
Keep in mind, I'm going to say again, Jonna had no idea or understanding for what I did from day to day. So how is she rating me anything when she doesn't even know what I do? But again, it wasn't a problem. Everything was perfectly fine.
Obviously, this is a conversation. So if there's examples of exceeding expectations that you'd like to have considered, absolutely, I encourage you to share.
Well, just even the example of the DEI work. So again, taking an opportunity to be able to provide feedback to Rosemary and Kristen, and them asking, if I would be willing to help with that. Me saying yes, me developing the DEI task force, us actively meeting to go through the process of acquiring external partnership. Like all of that was initiated by me. So that is one example, just there. So I'm not, yeah.
Jonna, what are your thoughts on that?
I do think, obviously, Kimberlyn, you do deserve the credit for.
So before Jonna answers, I just want to say, pay attention to her answer. And I want y'all to tell me your feelings in the comments, okay, based on her answer. So I just talked about how I was the reason that we established this entire diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, why we were getting an external operator, because I had elevated these issues since the second week that I had been there, okay? So listen to Jonna and talk about her thoughts.
Yeah.
Jonna, what are your thoughts on that?
I do think, obviously, Kimberlyn, you do deserve the credit for, initiating that for sure. I'm wondering at this, and I know that it was a good starting point for us to move forward. And it has, I want to say, I guess maybe I'm just getting hung up on the words here, Noreen, about the idea of like advancement of the department. I don't know. I can't confidently say that we've advanced as a department yet.
And I want to underscore that. No, they did not advance as a department. They never advanced as a department. But that wasn't my fault. That was because y'all were committed to upholding this system of white supremacy. But I'm going to let her finish. I'm going
to put yet on that, Kimberlyn, because of that. So I don't know if that's and maybe I'm just hung up on that.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please do, Portia.
I don't know if I'm allowed to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, please do.
So when I think first, hi.
Hi, everybody.
You look great, Portia.
Thank you. Thank you. Wednesdays are crazy, but I'm so sorry. But so when I hear this, what I think about is maybe like advancement may not always be tangible, meaning that we have something already in place, but I do agree that even the conversation in which started from that initiation, I don't believe we would have had if it had not been brought to our attention. So I think some of the holdup, of course, is always procedures and the way that we have to do things. So I would say that even the changes that have occurred with just engaging in the conversation, even from Kimberlyn to Rosemary to our interim secretary, to get him on board to say, yes, I absolutely think this is an area that we need to focus. So those are just my thoughts. And so we can clarify if advancement means that we have something in place that's tangible, or, the changes for even the conversation to happen and saying, correct, yes, this is something that we're going to do or put in place, where that conversation was not happening before. At least in the CSI, I consider department as CSI as well. So I don't know if that makes any difference either.
And I think the second point there about the exceptional initiative in that way is, obviously encompasses that. So I don't, want to pick it apart by words, but, that would be my only thought on that.
Yeah.
And I agree with Portia.
Typically, I would say has that contribution moved beyond talk? Because typically that's where things begin. There's a lot of discussion, but to actually make change happen, how is something different as a result of that initiative? Like good, better, ugly. We have a lot of failed initiatives. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's there's no credit for that, but because there was no impact, because it didn't work, didn't mean that the person didn't take initiative. There could still be an exceeds expectations on something that is done and attempted and change has come about, but then it fails. Maybe it's a service that schools really don't want. Maybe it's a service that, our competitor does better. So it's not always about what actually is successful, but if change happens. So I would tend to say, yeah, let's see what that impact is, but I'm also not willing to stand in the way of moving this to exceeds expectations, because I do know that there was a lot of work that was done to move that topic forward. So I'm on the fence with that one, and I'm fine moving it up to exceeds expectations if Dr. Weller is.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make sure that, because I also think too, Kimberlyn, looking down the road as we think like end of year, evaluation will definitely have that impact. It may point to something more tangible, but, not to say that it's not now, of course.
All right. So I think we're in agreement. I'll move this one up to exceeds.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
So then the other one was customer service. And it really makes me think about, if you could go back to it just so I could see the language, but it makes me think about the work that I've been doing in Pittsburgh Public Schools. So I'm actually a part of a team of 3 who are creating a professional development for Pittsburgh Public Schools. And I was asked to be a part of that because of the work that I have been doing in 3 of their schools now, with Val Merlo at Pittsburgh Classical, that sprung over into Principal Berkowitz over at Pittsburgh King, jumping on and saying, oh my gosh, I need Kimberlyn to be here, which also influenced Principal Sykin over at Pittsburgh Langley to say, I want Kimberlyn to be here with that, which got the eye of Sheree Kurd, Director of Teacher and Learning, who said, hey, I would like for you to be on this project because I value what you have to offer. So that is not something that would have normally been within the scope of my work. This is something that they're utilizing district-wide and not just for CSI schools, but because of my work and level of customer service with Pittsburgh Public Schools, it has opened that door. So I do think that is an area that shows that, from my customer service with one school, that has expanded to be able to impact an entire district outside of the CSI system.
John, any thoughts on that one? You're muted.
Yeah, I was unmuted. I muted myself. That's backwards. Sorry. Hearing you explain that, Kimberlyn, puts more detail into my understanding of the beginnings of that work, as I knew that there were some conversations about that, but not to the expanse of like the whole district, which is a CSI district. And I know that we've been doing LEA work with them, but that, you're influencing beyond the CSI schools and into the LEA.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to push back on this one. It's not malicious. I just want to get more information and need that information to agree. So that's a great example. Is it consistently going above and beyond your job description? The one thing I'm seeing here under exceeds is presenting supervisor with solutions for customer satisfaction beyond nature and scope of your position. So is that something that's been happening regularly?
Yes, it is.
So keep in mind that Noreen knows that she is here co-supervising me because of the HR complaint against Jana. So all of this is facetious that she's doing right now. All of this. Okay. So keep that in mind.
It's been happening on many different levels. So again, it started out at one school and then it has blossomed over into other schools. But then it went outside of the CSI system into how can we help to impact the entire district, schools that are not CSI. So, yeah.
I'm saying, are you giving, it's to your supervisor. Are you presenting those solutions to your supervisor? So it would have been to Jana. So
I guess I kind of push back on that limited thing of that it would have had to be with Jana. So in this case, the supervisor, if you will, is Jenny because she's the regional lead, not that it was something that I had to go through Jana to do. So if that was the process of make sure I asked Jana for permission to go do that, then that would have been done. But that's not how the work was delivered to me. So I think I would have a lot of questions about that interpretation of to supervisor.
So let me jump back over to our organizational chart. This is why I wanted to make sure I had this for today so that we can not get lost. So again, if you look in the middle of where IU 13 is, Lancaster, Lebanon, IU, there's Kristen, there's Portia, and then there are the 3 regional leads. Jana is not in this branch of the work that needs to be done. She was simply our supervisor in name. She did not do anything in regards to the work that we did day to day. So in this case, the regional lead in the Pittsburgh area asked me to show up for Pittsburgh Public Schools so that I could create this professional learning experience. And I talked to their director of learning and all of that, and we got that together. Jana is not included in any of this because this is not what she does. I don't know what she was doing from day to day, but it definitely wasn't the work that we were doing. So why would I go and be like, hey, Jonna, this is what I'm doing? I don't feel like that's my job to do that. It sounds like all of these people that are in leadership need to have a conversation about the things that they are asking people to do. That does not sound like a me thing that I'm supposed to go and report to my abusive supervisor that I'm doing something in a school. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I believe that Jonna should be aware of the work that you're doing and those recommendations that you have, because Kimberlyn, it's her role in the system. If you're providing that recommendation to her, that could be something that she could carry forth with other people that she supervises as well. So I'd encourage you to have that.
So let me pause one more time and show y'all this one more time. Okay. Do y'all see who Jonna reports to? CCIU. She has zero impact and influence on the things that are happening in the schools. That stuff comes through the regional leads and through Portia. I just want to make sure we're clear. I just want to make sure that y'all could make these connections.
Communication with her, not necessarily as a permission, but more as for the good of the cause. There would be a greater customer service by the system overall if she's aware of it.
No, I totally agree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. And I know Jonna and I have had many conversations about things. My question here, though, is about policy, right, and practice. So that's not how this operates, where let me try to think of how to explain it. That
I'm trying to explain to Noreen how this works, knowing that she has no idea how this works. Jonna barely has any idea how this works. So I'm trying to explain to her, as she's trying to use an evaluation instrument that is not specific to the job and role that I do, to evaluate me for something that is not in place.
If a regional lead contacts me to go into work, to do work in a district or what have you, as far as I'm aware, unless this is something that has not been communicated to me, I don't then say, hey, Jonna, by the way, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I go do the work. So I'm not really understanding that interpretation. So a regional lead has contacted me and said, hey, this is the feedback we've gotten here. This is here. What do you think about this? We're working. Like, the procedure wasn't to then contact Jonna or, hey, Jonna, bring that. Like, I don't feel like that was my place to do. Like, I don't know. That doesn't feel good to me.
No, and Kimberlyn, I absolutely hear what you're saying. And I think, Noreen, what you're saying is that it's not that not bringing it forward wasn't meeting expectations or that there was anything wrong with that. And Noreen, I don't know how you're, as I'm, rereading these little teeny words and trying to go back to the screen to see, I think what you're saying, Noreen, is that in order to exceed the expectations and go beyond, it would expand and ripple into something more than your niche and corner with that particular school system, which is, a CSI LEA that within the job description is your work. You're absolutely right. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing within the job description of providing professional development. So Noreen, I'm not sure if I'm doing justice of explaining the difference between what you're thinking about the distinction of moving up to exceeds.
Yeah, I'm trying to take the examples from both of you and crosswalking them into this rubric. So when I'm seeing present supervisor with solutions for customer satisfaction beyond nature and scope of his or her position, my experience with this rubric is if Kimberlyn's providing such a solution regarding customer service to meet the needs of those that we serve, and that's a problem of practice that typically comes up. If then, Kimberlyn, you're sharing that with Jonna so that Jonna can also share that with others, it communicates or rises the level of customer service well beyond the individual and more becomes systemic, so that that solution's shared and has greater impact. And I think that's the way that I'm used to working in this rubric. So that's why I'm asking. And I think it's complicated by the fact of you have a regional lead and it's not a linear relationship. So I understand that complication. And perhaps there's ways that you have brought that forward where it's impacted others. I'm looking for the evidence to be able to move it up. And that's why I'm asking for clarification there.
Yeah, I was going to say what I'm hearing is that clarification around like how to exceed that expectation because of the organization of the system itself does not lend itself to the definition that you just shared, Noreen, which you just shared again. And then in thinking about the work as support to CSI designated schools, like we don't have like CSI LEAs, like we have CSI designated schools. And when we're always encouraging that our work and support is not just for those schools, that it should extend beyond, like, you know, it's hashtag everybody wants to be in CSI because we make this so, you know, so awesome that people want to be a part of it. So that's what I'm hearing, that it's something that is seen as work in these schools that's good enough for work extended beyond. So that's what I heard. I think the challenge is definitely our organization and how that information feeds or gets back that proves challenging.
Yeah. And for clarification, I just pasted in the actual, like lifted it from the next tab around the actual like job description. So, you know, when you're saying about like, how does it go beyond? I think, you know, we could, and Kimberly, you know, to your point, it extends beyond the typical, but, you know, to Noreen's point, is it extending enough beyond? And by typical, it doesn't mean that, you know, doesn't meet expectations. It just means that it's the typical expectations.
I'm going to say I disagree, but I also know that it's 1:08 and I would like to be finished with this process today. So I'm
Can I also pose just another question? Because I do have to jump out. I'm late for another meeting, but like if our work is with, it will always be with CSI designated schools. Like that's where the work starts, and that's where we are, I would say, married to, are those designated schools. So anything beyond those designated schools is beyond. I mean, I don't know. I'm struggling with this one as well, but I just, you know, wanted to just pose that as a thought. It's going to always be regulated to those 95 schools. So at CCIU, internal customers are external customers. So customer service can be internal, many times is. The idea of this being something that would be shared with supervisor for larger impact, I could see is applying to CSI, greatly so because of the number of CSI schools. I'm fine with putting this as exceeds expectations. I don't have any worries, just needed clarification on that, and I'm okay with moving that up, so I can do that if the system lets me. There we go.
I think it's something that needs to be clarified because of the system that we work in, and
I would say there is such diversity in the wide range of positions within CCIU that every job needs some kind of, you know, well, what does this mean in my context? So we're not alone there. Job skills ratings, these are all basic regarding your job description. The goals that I know that we talked about last time, and Kimberly, I believe that I mentioned that one goal, a fifth goal, would be yours. So because this is not needed for the 90-day evaluation, my recommendation would be that we take a look at these again. And I'd like to do that within the next couple of weeks, because we need to add your goal, and because there's numerical points associated with these. So oftentimes, I believe I mentioned before, we change these during the school year. How would it be fair to evaluate someone on a goal that is no longer relevant because of, say, the pandemic or shifting gears? That would bring us to the summary for today. So I believe that we could be done today with a goal of 32, evaluation score of 32. My recommendation would be that we'd meet about goals at another time to make sure that those goals are accurate for you, so that at the end of the year evaluation, we're evaluating you on goals that are relevant.
Okay.
Is that all right with you?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so what we'll do is, why is it incomplete? Oh,
So I'm gonna actually play this part. I was gonna cut it off because this is basically like the end of the actual evaluation. But I just want to show this because again, Noreen is the director of innovation and technology. Okay, so I want to show you all this fumbling through of technology.
all right. All right, so I just put TBD in that to kind of get around this issue.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. How many points?
This system is so antiquated.
All right, let me try again.
But she's innovation and technology.
And can you sign?
So I'm not exactly sure where to do that. So I know I have this FileMaker
The teal
folder,
Yep.
but I don't really know how to log into that because it's not the FileMaker login that I use for FileMaker any other time.
You're right. It's not the same FileMaker site that Mike uses, that we use for the schools. But if you click that teal folder in your trough on your laptop, it should open up, and that will take your, like Kimberlyn J will be your login, and then your password is your typical password that you would use.
Okay.
Now, the reason I'm letting this play, y'all, is because I really want you to understand how antiquated and dysfunctional the system is that they were using to do these evaluations.
So I go to evaluations, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yep.
To be redirected. Okay. And there's an error.
Do you want to share your screen?
I'm on 2 different computers. So
okay.
My camera makes the MacBook crash. So I have to have my camera on this one. It's not, but it's a workaround.
So when I talk about workarounds, that's what this work was just a whole bunch of working around, trying to work with a dysfunctional type of system to create some type of positive effect. So that's basically what happened with the second part of my 90-day evaluation. But wait, there's more. So next episode, I want to share with you all what happened because Noreen wanted to have a third meeting for me to choose this goal that she was talking about. Now, keep in mind, I was originally told that my 90-day evaluation had to be completed by January, the 29th. Keep in mind that that was postponed because Noreen had a personal emergency. So that's how we wound up at the February 8th date. Now, my 90-day evaluation was supposed to be done in December. Okay. But now We didn't start until February 8th, and this meeting took place on February 24th. So it is 2 full months past due. And now she wants to have a third meeting for setting a goal. So I'll tell y'all what happened with that on the next episode. So having said all of that, I thank you for hanging out with me and receiving all of this. I know it was a lot of acronyms that were being thrown around. So I was trying to put up what those acronyms meant as they were flying about. So hopefully I caught all of those, but please, again, do like, do share, do subscribe, do send this to anyone and everyone that you think might need to see it. Also, if you are feeling moved in your spirit to support this cause, I would really appreciate you joining my Patreon, and there you will be able to get firsthand knowledge of everything that is happening with this situation as CCIU continues to try to ratchet up their strategies for how they're going to get me to stop talking. All right. So having said that, I am going to go. It is actually a Friday night, so I'm going to go and try to enjoy myself with something on this Friday night. And I will post this as soon as it is edited onto my YouTube page publicly. And then I will be working on the next episode because there are so many more. All right. So having said that, I love y'all. Bye.